Good day. Welcome to Arcane Arcade, the introduction. In this video series, I will be explaining the entirety of my handcrafted tarot game book in order to share with the general public what I have done so they can appreciate the magnitude of my renovation on the tarot. According to Jason Rezor-Giorgiani, who is without question the greatest philosopher since Nietzsche, this book is the greatest innovation in the tarot. The book and the game that is devised in it is the greatest innovation in tarot since the epoch of Crowley and Waite. Polari excavates and reinterprets the tarot with a view to esoteric symbolism and archetypal psychology in a way that is both enlightening and engaging. Arcane Arcade ought to be widely embraced as a form of play and occult practice that promises to carry the wisdom of this divination system forward into the postmodern epoch as forcefully as the tarot of the Marseille carried it from medieval times into the modern age. And you will be able to verify this review for yourself as I read out loud my book word for word, and then also offer some of my own interpretations because this is also me recording this live. Yes, that's me, Jeff Polari, the author of the book, basically giving away my book so that people can appreciate what I've done, because it still hasn't seemed to have caught on quite yet how significant this improvisation of the tarot quite is. So in this book, Arcane Arcade, you can play a tarot-based game simply by using the poster you see here in a manner just like rock, paper, scissors, but with a few extra steps and a lot more fun. First, you and your partner pick whatever archetype or gesture you please from the poster above. You can also play against the tarot itself as well by shuffling the major arcana and then pulling a card instead of a gesture. Then you chant T-A-R-O and show the archetype's gesture or card in the letter O. In that sense, the moment you say O, you produce whatever hand gesture you have picked. You then use the color coding system to determine the elemental principle of your chosen archetype, and then compare it with your opponent to determine the winner of the round. So you'll see that yellow represents air. All of the gestures with a yellow orb around them are air gestures. Likewise, blue is water, red is fire, and green is earth. And the elemental sequence is shown in the center of the poster with the mandala, where air trumps water, water trumps fire, fire trumps earth, and earth trumps air. And you'll see the 19th and 20th arcana, which are respectively the sun and the judgment card, require a little explanation, but that will be explained in detail on the respective chapters. The only reason why these two are not as simple as the rest is the tarot is a system that includes 22 major arcana, and I meant for these two cards to be more adaptable to different situations so that each of the elements would be equally represented in the tarot. So there isn't one that is more representative than the other. In this way, the game is perfectly balanced and cannot be used to any one particular element advantage. And the reason why this is because the combination of the four elements, air, water, fire, and earth, helps produce the fifth element, which is spirit. That is, when they are all in balance, then spirit is produced. We'll explain what that all means as the game goes on, but these are just helpful introductory points. Now, you can play Arcane Arcade in one of two ways. You can play to win, or you can play to learn. You can play to win just by using the trump system to determine who wins when you do the hand gesture game with another person. This system is actually very interesting because when you do the game, it's always a form of alchemy and synchronicity. Whichever gesture you choose has some kind of relationship to the one that your opponent or your friend has chosen based on the principle of synchronicity, which is thoroughly embedded into the tarot and into the gameplay system. So in this instance, it is my belief that whoever wins in this game is actually the rightful winner in a spiritual sense. On the other hand, you can play the game in order to learn. And when you do that, you spend some time learning about what archetypes the person chose and why they chose it compared to you. And you can use the elemental system to make some analyses about how your personalities and your moods go together based on the archetypes you chose. This may seem elaborate, however, it is impossible for you to make a hand gesture in this game without having made some kind of significant choice about which one you were drawn to. Mostly, I just look at the poster or think about whichever one pops into my head, and then I produce that one with my hand. Likewise, it's impossible for somebody else not to do a similar way, because no matter what happens at the very end, the archetype that you choose represents something significant about you in that moment. So when you play the game to learn, you can learn how the card or the gesture that was chosen represents your own mood in the moment, and then how that compares to your opponent or your friends. And in the learner format of the game, it's not just about trumping your opponent. It's about learning how the elements fit together. If two people choose the same element, it can show that they're of like mind. If two people choose opposite elements, it can show how they're different but supporting. If people choose in the trump cycle, maybe instead of seeing someone as a winner, you can see them more as a leader. Okay, so these are the two basic modes of Arcane Arcade, but there is also a board game edition that's included in this book, as well as a solitary mode, further explained how you play against the tarot itself. And with that in mind, I now will read to you the introduction of the book. Page 1. Using the tarot only for divination is like using a car only to store gasoline. In short, if one only sees the tarot as a means of telling the future, they're missing out on practically everything it is good for. While we do not know for sure where the tarot came from, scholars agree that the tarot was once a game. Nevertheless, the tarot of today could not be considered further from a game by its users and experts. I see this as a major oversight long overdue for a correction. After all, who can deny that discovery, at its best, is a form of play? Play is how children turn inanimate objects into toys with lives of their own. Since the world is a stage, it is possible our lives are products of play as well. Even if you think the tarot is sacred, its foremost characters, the rogue fool and the mercurial magician, remind us to take everything in life with a sense of humor and a dose of divine irreverence. Nonetheless, the major challenge in implementing a game system out of the tarot is protecting its cards. Indeed, some tarot readers will not even let their clients touch their cards in a session for fear of contaminating them with grime or energetic baggage. Thus, the prospect of actually making a game out of the tarot has been as untenable as sharing a toothbrush for your soul with strangers. That is, until now. This book asks, since all the best things in life are done with your hands, why not the tarot as well? After all, what medium could be more fit to reflect the universality, subtlety, and applicability of the tarot's major archetypes other than your hands? Essentially, Arcane Arcade creates a rock, paper, scissors reinterpretation of the tarot, which differs in only two basic ways from the original rock, paper, scissors. The first is that there are 22 hand gestures instead of 3 for each of the major arcana. See the Arcane Arcade poster. And each archetype has an elemental power, also on the poster. Only the second point really needs an explanation. Basically, elements, like rocks, papers, and scissors, exist in a hierarchy. To be as unambiguous as possible as to what that order is, I draw the conclusion that their ideal sequence is demonstrated in the zodiac's precession of the equinoxes. Thus, water follows fire, fire, earth, earth, air, and then air, water. This is demonstrated in the age of Aquarius, starting roughly at the new millennium, overcoming the age of Pisces. These ages occur due to the Earth's 23-degree tilt, which inclines the Earth towards a major house in the zodiac for about 2,100 years, to make a complete cycle of 25,000 years, or 1 grand year. To understand the significance of this shift, simply compare how the airy qualities of Aquarius are overcoming the watery ones of Pisces, and you have proof of the Arcane Arcade's elemental order. For example, the ascribed qualities of the Piscean age include deeply emotional subjects of religion, sacrifice, belief, and faith, while Aquarius represents the airy and free spirit of science, space exploration, and social revolution. Clearly, from the vantage point of the 21st century, we can see how religion, which has been the dominant social force of the past 2,000 years, is giving way to science, which is mushrooming right on schedule with Aquarius's arrival. Even so, the whole paradigm of Aquarian science actually rests on the development of Piscean faith, for it was in Pisces that the universe was widely appraised as intelligently ordered by God. Without the all-encompassing logos of God, the science of today would not even have the foundation of faith that its observations reflect something that can be understood. Nonetheless, as the rapid acceleration of technology shows, humanity is due to evolve again. This example shows how air trumps water in astrology. The tarot helps to visually conceive of this elemental sequence, since there are 12 tarot cards assigned to the 12 astrology signs. You can see this in chapter 19, the Sun. Thus we find that Pisces, the hanged man, represents the drowned self or deity. Aquarius, the star, is the airy pole upon whom the hanged man is hung. Capricorn, which will be the age after Pisces, is the devil that snaps the dreamer or star back to earth. Finally, Sagittarius, which is the card Temperance in the tarot, is the alchemical fire that will transform the baseness of the devil into something magical. These 4 signs form an alchemical square. Use your imagination and you can discover how the remaining 8 signs spiral up and back around to Pisces once again. Use your chart if you are confused. The process makes as much sense astrologically as it does physically. Water puts out the fire. Air clears or dries the murkiness of water. Earth is the heavyweight champion over the featherweight of air, and fire devours earth in its blaze. My job in this book and video series is to help you see that each of the 22 hand gestures of the tarot has just one main element, and that elemental hand gesture provided corresponds exactly to the idea of the archetype that they represent. Nevertheless, unless you know what the tarot cards themselves mean, none of that will matter anyways. Therefore, I have a third job, and it is to teach you about the cards in a way that is interesting, fresh, and comprehensible. I have structured the following sections of the book based upon these needs, so that you can learn the archetype, the element, and the hand gesture of each of the tarot cards. Lastly, before I do that, I just want to offer some thoughts about the overall meaning of the tarot's own archetype, the tarot's own elemental power, and why you should use hand gestures instead of cards sometimes to interact with the tarot. Introduction Part 2. The Tarot. The Archetype. The tarot's archetype is explained in its name. Tarot literally means star, meaning it is a system of guidance you can eternally count upon to navigate your way through the dark night of the soul. In some ways, the mystery of the stars is why they are so effective in resolving life's deepest mysteries. Stars have, after all, been understood in many different ways throughout history. In the past, stars were named, deified, and worshipped. Today, we think of them as giant nuclear exploding balls of gas that can become so massive their implosion tears a hole in the fabric of reality as a black hole, and that is no less bewildering than believing that they are gods. Perhaps the greatest clue as to what the stars really are is in the nursery rhyme, "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the clouds so high, like a diamond in the sky. Now, when you sing that song out loud, you discover the clue I'm referring to. For this is the same melody used in the ABC song. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know the rest, I hope you see. The fact that they are shared the same melody implies that the ABCs are the answer to the riddle in Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The letters are, therefore, the stars inside you that make words that lead to worlds upon worlds, as above, so below. So, in other words, when you know the alphabet, you are able to travel to the farthest of worlds because, by the power of reading and writing, you can discover and create worlds upon worlds, as above, so below. The tarot's arcana is the esoteric alphabet needed to access these higher planes of consciousness. So this will show you how to really tap into the power of language. This book only discusses the first 22 trump cards of the tarot's 78 because they are the major and therefore the most important arcana. These trump cards also have a direct correlation with the Hebrew alphabet's 22 letters, which this game/book does not cover. Each of these arcana presents a significant psychological milestone and/or identity we must come to grips with on our way to spiritual maturity. That destination is pictured in card 21, the world/universe, when we realize how we make our own realities. Conversely, card 0, the Fool, shows our ignorant but blissful beginning. Each new card in the tarot is another step upon the stairway of consciousness you may use to break through transformative thresholds that ultimately turn you into the star that you are. Now, the element of the tarot, spirit. Esoterically, the star, or pentagram, may be considered the fifth element because it is formed by the convergence of the other four elements, water, earth, air, and fire. Psychologically, it represents the wholeness of ourselves when we have unified our opposites. In so doing, we reach equilibration between the passion of fire, the coolness of water, the whirl of air, and the satiety of earth. Since the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, when these elements are brought together, they form a new power, spirit. Spirituality gets a bad rap, but the idea is so simple that even the most atheist person could appreciate it with a simple twist of a reinterpretation. Instead of seeing spirituality as some mystical connection to the great beyond, why not settle for the very meaning of the word, which is to be filled with spirit, or simply spirited? Therefore, a person may be spiritual when they are totally engaged in any activity, whether it is playing this game, reading a book, or driving a car. The key is to realize that, at some level, what we are doing takes on a life of its own. Likewise, the tarot takes on a life of its own, especially when understood in its full context. Hand gestures. Finally, you may ask, why hand gestures? Let's start at the most simple level of the hands themselves. Physically, there are more neuron connections between your hands and your brain than anywhere else in the body. Hence, your hands share in the intelligence of your mind in ways we ought to recognize and cultivate. Socially, hands convey an entirely nonverbal language that overcomes many of the hang-ups seen in verbal language. An open hand, for instance, refers to one's willingness to give as well as receive. An open hand is likewise used to greet and wave goodbye. Linguistically, we tend to conceive of the two behaviors, giving and receiving, or greeting and parting, as separate. But in embodied reality, they are one and the same. Finally, there's something so spiritual and intimate about our hands. Our hands are very beautiful instruments that have been intuitively perfected in accordance with the environment and our intent to manipulate it. How magical is it then that your fingerprints are completely unique to you as well? Could this mean that your hands are the doorways to unlocking and owning your reality? If your hands are your doorways to the world, then gestures would be the keys used to open those doorways. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, the French phenomenologist, stated that gestures were the original language of humanity. He suggests that it was from our ability to point that we developed our capacity for notional space. This imaginal distance would allow us to make the leap into more complex forms of thinking and communication with words and pictures. What's so radical about that idea is, assuming that it's true, all messages should be treated as gestures at their root. Ponty says, "The spoken word is a gesture, and its meaning a world. Thus, it is only when we look beyond what is being said to what is being intended or gestured to that we get the true meaning of the message." As we explore the archetypes of the tarot and the related hand gestures, it helps to keep this principle in mind. The point of our study is not to fixate on the cards or the gestures themselves, but rather on the experiences, knowledge, and world that they imply. That is the end of the introduction to Arcane Arcade. Now that you've learned about the archetypes, elements, and hand gestures of the tarot itself, and have seen the poster I've provided, you can now explore the tarot in depth with the following sections. I will report back on that very soon with the next episode, The Fool. Thank you. If you like my reading, go ahead and buy the book on Amazon, which is in the link below. Give me a good review. We can even play the game together. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.